Yes, welcome. So a little bit about myself before I start. I guess this is a really important topic to me. It's been like a 2 years transformation I've been going through now and I really realized that as a designer, I really wanted to make a difference. Like a lot of us want to do that. And I've decided to take it to another level in the last years. Just due to the situation that we live in, the global climate action or climate change issues that we're facing into, and sort of looking at all these personal changes I was trying to make a lot of changes on a personal level to be more sustainable. I realized that I was constantly trying to swim against the system, which made me really frustrated, and I decided to sort of quit my job and find a way to fix that problem. So after a year's investigation, I've come across lots of really interesting knowledge. Definitely the Sustainable Development Goals were a key enablers together with all the concepts around circular economy. And I realized this is it. We need to redesign the way our society is organized, the way we do stuff, to really have a more holistic way of, creating products and services. So my why is, I believe in an economy that is truly circular for an ethical and regenerative society. And I guess the way I want to do that is by driving the transition to a circular economy in Australia. So we can transition businesses, communities, and organizations to a new model and a new way of operating. So at the back of that, I have created a company called CircleCo. And to achieve this goal of mine, I've sort of set out three different approach, I guess. One is about building awareness and education around circular economy through workshops and training to help people really understand the potential of what it means and how they could apply that either on a personal level or in their role as a business level. The second aspect is also then helping organization create their circular strategy and understanding what the way forward could look like for them in that new model. And then the last aspect is innovation through circular design, where either as a single organization or as an industry, people come together and look at ways to change their entire models and collaborate in a different way. So that's sort of what I'm focusing on at the moment. So what I want to talk about with you now is a little bit of context around circular economy. And if you look at the current situation today, our global economy is actually only 8.6% circular. There's a whole gap report that I really invite you guys to have a read, which is that image on the right-hand side. And what's quite concerning about that recent report is that we've actually gone backwards. And a couple of years ago, we were 9.1% circular. There's a whole lot of calculations and analysis that's gone in the background to come up with that number. But yeah, the bad news is that we've gone backwards. And I guess the reason why we've gone backwards is really based on three different trends that we keep observing at the moment. The first one is that, we operate in a take, make, waste linear system right now. So we take resources, we make stuff with it. And once we've done using them, then we waste them and don't really leverage the value left in those products or material. And so the trends that we've observed now is that in that take stage, we are still extracting very, very high rates of resources. So material extraction, actually, in the last 5 decades, the global use of materials has more than tripled. So this is a massive increase, and it's not going to slow down for now, because a lot of countries are, getting to the level that we are at now, and all these resources keep being extracted to, enable that development and that progress. So right now we are in a linear economy. So we take stuff, we make stuff, and we waste stuff. And the reason why we're going backwards is that we keep extracting at really high rates in the tech space. And we've sort of already triples the use of material in the last 5 decades. So that's a really massive number. Then in the make space, we keep stock build up. So we keep making things that are using a lot of material. So urbanization is a big factor that increases the use of that material. And then we also keep building a lot of physical assets that we use for less than a year. And some examples of that are your mobile phone, T-shirts or clothing items. So we are in that movement of continually creating stuff. And then I guess the last downside of this trend is that we have very low level of end-of-use processing and cycling. Although the recovery rates are a little bit on the increase, we are still producing at such a high rate that we're not catching up. And that waste amount is really continuously increasing. So that's sort of the reason why we are going backwards at the moment. Now, what is the alternative to this linear model that we are in? And I guess that's inspired by the donut economics from Kate Raworth. And I think, first of all, if we start rethinking what an economy is and how it operates, that will really help us change that paradigm and the way we are doing what we're doing. So there's a really nice definition for around the reason of that donut economics and how that's if you look at that circle on the right hand side, there's a social foundation of well-being that no one should fall below. So that's the middle part. We don't want to fall below that middle part. And then there's an ecological ceiling of planetary pressure that we should not go beyond, which is that outer side of the donuts. And a donut is really nice analogy because it's quite simple. It's easy for people to understand, and it's a word that works in almost all languages. So what we're trying to do here is creating a safe and just space for humanity where we're addressing social needs that we have, but we're doing this in the constraints of the planetary boundaries that we live in. So to do that, there's sort of 7 key steps or actions that we need to take. The first one is changing the goal. So moving away from GDP growth to the donut, which is that new model. The second one is seeing the big picture. So rather than being a self-contained market, we are in an embedded economy. The third one is nurturing human nature. So moving from rational economic man to social adaptable humans. And back to what some of what Chris was mentioning before, we are a group of humans that is interconnected. So we're not that just agents in a market that does things in and out. The fourth aspect is getting savvy with systems. So moving away from mechanical equilibrium to dynamic complexity and embracing that complexity. The fifth aspect is designing to distribute. So moving away from growth that will keep going up, but then going more into a distributive economy. The sixth aspect is around creating to regenerate. So how growth can clean up again and regenerate the system that we're in by design. And the final one is being agnostic about growth, which really means that rather than having that addiction to growth and always wanting more and more and getting bigger, it's really embrace, like finding that balance and feeling in that sufficient level with something else that Chris was mentioning before, which I felt resonated quite well with that framework. So I guess circular economy in the donut economics is a key enabler for that, and it really helps us change the way we look at our economy. So I like that chart because it's quite simple to understand. Right now in the linear economy, we extract material, we manufacture it, put it together, retail it, and at the top, that's where your user is using that product, and all the value sort of builds up as all these different processes are put in place. As after the use stage, we usually don't have any mechanism in place to capture the value left in that product, and the value is destroyed quite quickly. In a circular economy, you put strategies in place that will help you capture value all the way through the process. So first of all, that value should remain, be kept longer at the use stage through repair and maintenance strategies. And then as the value sort of becomes less obvious, It's finding new mechanism to capture whatever value is left. So reusing and redistributing aspects of the product or the materials to then extend the period of use. If that's not enough, then if that's not really at that stage anymore, you can refurbish or remanufacture. And sort of last resort is recycling. And I guess the challenge with the circular economy at the moment in Australia is becoming quite popular and talked about. The challenge is that it's often assimilated to recycling or like recycling 2.0. And that's a really big danger that we run into because this is really actually a very, very small part of the circular economy and something that you want to get to really after having tried a lot of other strategies. Covering off high level what the benefits of a circular economy is. First of all, there's like 3 key principles for a circular economy. The first one is designing out waste and pollution. So how do we create a system or a business or a product with having in mind looking at reducing that waste and pollution? The second aspect or principle is keeping the product and the materials in use for as long as possible. And then the third one is regenerating the natural systems. If you apply those principles to the way you run a business or even, structure and organize a city or even live your everyday life, there's a range of opportunities that can be grabbed, I guess. First of all, they gain a lot of efficiencies and cost reduction. When you remove that waste and pollution, you're saving money. Another aspect is differentiating, getting a differentiating advantage. So it is offering different products and different ways to access those products. And that's definitely a differentiator for an organization. It does lead to creation of jobs. If you look at, capturing that value at the end of the cycle, you actually are creating roles for people to collect or maintain or repair those products, which would have been lost otherwise. And then the final opportunity for a business to move into a circular economy is that you get stronger engagement with your customers, your employees, and your entire value chain, because you find ways to, your narrative and your story around what you do and why you do it is a lot stronger and has a lot more weight when it comes to, doing something that will do good for the planet and for people. Also for businesses, looking at a circular economy, if you're taking a more risk aversion lens to it, this is a really great way to minimize your reliance on high commodity prices. This is also a way to addressing the waste issue that now everyone is facing. You can address the environmental impact that is becoming a lot more prominent in people's minds. Your consumers are demanding it. There's a lot more policies and regulation that are now really limiting what business can do on the environment. And there's also the social impacts risk that you can address. Obviously, the earth overuse and the resource scarcity. So whether you want to look at it as a positive opportunity or a way to mitigate risk, circular economy has a lot of benefits in those different areas. So if we just step back around what are the societal needs and wants that we have in the current economy, there's 7 of them. Housing and infrastructure, we need to all live in places, work, commute around the world. There are also services. So how do we access all the, banking, insurance, etc.? Nutrition is a big area. Agriculture is a big part of that. Healthcare is another key societal needs. Mobility, communication, and consumables. So if you look at those 7 societal needs and wants, we need to find a way to redesign the economy and the way we approach these so we can really live within the boundaries of the planet, but also create social impacts and reduce that inequality and poverty gap. So how might we satisfy those different needs within the planetary boundaries? To me, what's really important, and that's been mentioned already by Chris as well, is that we need to redesign all aspects of our economy, whether you look at it at an industry level or the value chain, whether you look at your business model and the investment mechanism that we have in place, whether you look at the product design and how we look at it from an end-to-end point of view rather than just designing it for the use stage, but really understanding what you do even during the manufacturing stage and how you can really reduce that impact in the production of that product then during the use of that product, and then at the end of its life, how do you really capitalize on all the aspects that are making that product? We also need to redesign our policies, the way we look at material and resources, how we consume, and our lifestyle overall. So to do all of that, circular design is a great tool. And I've sort of put together a bit of an approach that I'm still, testing out. But to me, the key methods and tools that we need to use to get to that circular design, that circular model, is really leveraging human-centered design, system thinking, and life cycle thinking. And so in the way I approach projects, the way I look at it is that you want to really understand the human needs that you're trying to satisfy. So, that desirability aspect, to really understand what is the problem we're trying to solve for people. Because if you're not solving someone's problem, but you come up with a great ecological way of delivering something that no one wants, this is not going to be very helpful. And I would also take that human-centered approach, design-centered approach to your stakeholders and your employees, really building that empathy for how do we currently work, what are the needs of our workforce and our partners and suppliers as well. So you really look at that desirability aspect from all points of view. Adding to that is the system thinking lens. So really zooming out and understanding how we live in these interconnected systems that are really complex. So understanding the human systems and what comes at play around that particular problem, how that fits in the industrial system, and also understanding that all of those two systems are part of a broader system that we tend to ignore in a business lens, which is the ecological system that we live in. And so doing some system mapping and really understanding and all its interconnections are working really helps identify like a heat map about where can we affect change, what is the biggest thing, where do we see those connections point keep coming back, and identifying an intervention that you can drive to see how the system can change. And then the final aspect of circular design is that life cycle thinking. So looking at any products that you put on the market and really starting in a design stage, understanding, okay, how are we going to design this in a way that will maximize the use of that product and really use sustainable material. Finding ways to source this material, whether it's already material that has been processed or transformed in the past, but that can be re-injected in the system rather than wasted. Also, or sourcing sustainable material that you can that are regenerative. Then it's also looking at the manufacturing stage and how do you optimize that, the transport, distribution, use, reuse, and share stage. So there's lots of different strategies that can be put in place to be creative in that state. Maintenance is a key aspect, and then take back. So how does an organization think up front in the design stage about mechanism to take their material back or the products back so they can be restored and reprocessed, material can be recovered, and then sort of going back into that design stage. So sort of looping everything and ensuring it across all that life cycle that you're creating social value, financial value, obviously, but also ecological value. So overlaying all these different techniques really helps taking a more holistic view to how we do things. And whether you're trying to solve a challenge at an industry level or within a business or at a city level, you could apply those tools adapt these tools in different ways. Now, if we look at what a circular economy can be made of, there's pretty much 5 key circular business models that you can work with. The first one is circular supply. So you're using renewable energy or recyclable inputs. The second business model is resource recovery, and how do you create byproducts from your waste. The third one is product life extension, so looking at those strategies to repair, upgrade, maintain your product for as long as possible. Sharing platform is also a key model around connecting users between each other, between themselves to share the use and the access or the ownership. And then the final model is product as a service. So really looking at ways to remove the ownership from the end user and keep that ownership in the realm of the business. So then there's an accountability towards the end to actually take that product back and extract the value again from it. From those 5 business models, there are 3 disruptive technologies that can really help enable those business models. And by the way, the business models can be either looked at in isolation or can be combined. And I've got some examples after that to show you how they can be intertwined. So the disruptive technologies are digital, physical, and biological. So, Internet of Things, big data, blockchain are really great enablers to help us, for instance, create transparency across our supply chain and understand the journey of our material and products. Physical technology is also great. 3D printings enable you to locally print products and reuse certain material that has been processed and put back into a format that can be then printed in 3D. And then you have those bioenergy and bio-based material that can also really enable a more regenerative way of doing business. So now I'm not too sure how we're doing with time with all this challenge that we had before, but I have a few examples around that are circular. So Sustainable Salons is a business that I've been working with recently. We sort of worked on their 5-year strategy. And what Sustainable Salon does is they're collecting 95% of the waste made by hairdressers, and they're recycling or recreating value from that waste. So, for instance, they would take hair and transform them into hair booms, which are then used in the ocean to absorb oil spillage. The shampoo bottles that they collect from the hairdressers are being transformed into sunglasses, and that's a partnership they've created with Dresden. So they're sort of using a resource recovery as well as circular supply business model. And they're also creating amazing social impact stories. So with all the collection of the waste that they're making, they're creating jobs for socially disadvantaged people that are working in processing facilities to dismantle the different products and triage them so they can be repurposed. Money that they're making from diverting metal and chemical products from landfill, that has value. That money then is given to Oz Harvest, for instance, to feed people in need. So there's really beautiful stories around circular model that are financially viable. This is a social enterprise that is making money, but equally having great impact on the environment and the community. And this is something that is really engaging for the customer base. It feels so much better to know that you're making that little effort to separate your waste at the source, and then understanding that this is actually going to create extra value for a range of stakeholders. Another great example that I really love is Circle. This is a business launched by actually a fellow designer that used to be in Australia a while ago, and has created a line of sports gear that is using ocean plastic, that is being captured and then reused to create clothes. They also are, using a lot of circular design in the way they're delivering their products. They've been using extensive amount of community engagement to design the right products so that fits what people are needing to wear. And they are also, looking at producing this in a local way. So they're producing in Portugal for the French markets, really reducing their ecological footprints, doing the deliveries by bike. So they're really looking at the entire value chain and looking at all these different strategies that you can combine to be more circular. Another example, you see startups changing the way they operate, but you also have big players out there that are embracing circular design. So you look at Nike, they've created these 10 principles of circular design. They've published all their information online. So for any designers, they can leverage a lot of their strategies. And it's really about recyclability, avoiding waste in the production process, looking at ways that they can disassemble their materials so they can reuse aspects of it, looking at refurbishing the material, the durability, even packaging is also looked at. So there's a range of, innovation that they're driving, leveraging circular design.
Another example that is in quite a different industry is Philips. They're the pioneer of circular economy in the lighting space, and they're the ones that are selling lights as a service as opposed to light bulbs. And the way they do that is that they provide an end-to-end service to their clients. For instance, here that's an airport, where they're in charge of everything related to lighting. So the airport is paying a fee every month, and Philips is in charge of making it work, maintaining the light bulbs, replacing the appliances that are broken or not functioning properly. And this has really driven great improvements for the environment and also from a cost point of view. They've been able to be a lot more energy efficient, make their products last a lot longer by using modular product design, easy to maintain and upgrade material. So this is really pushing a business to really rethink the way they do everything, because at the end of the day, they're paying the bill if they're not being efficient enough. So this is back to that product as a service and product life extension being applied.
Oh, I think we might have to cut it because we're just like running out of time. Maybe if you don't, maybe we could talk through a couple more of examples during the panel discussion.
Sure, but I think we've covered a lot of the business models anyway.
Brilliant.
So Alison, who's on the line, I know is in circular fashion, and I know you're not happy about the circle example because there's plastic microfibers in there. So I guess just to comment on that, I think that, in a circular economy transition, we can't really aim for everything perfect to start with. And I think that's the challenge a lot of businesses are facing. They are either not really clear about how they can go about doing it, or trying to do something completely transformative from the outset. So, I think there are ways to start something on the journey and find ways that could, solve parts of the problem. And if you go back to system thinking, back to that ocean plastic being collected and transformed into clothing, this is trying to solve the problem of pollution in the ocean. Now, if you do your system map, you might realize, hang on, we're creating another problem here, that we're putting microfibers back into the water in the way when we wash those clothes. So I think it's critical that when you look at circular design, this needs to be iterative, and it never ends, because as soon as you start interfering with the system, you realize there's unintended consequences that you might be creating that you could not have really foreseen until you made that change happen. So I guess that's sort of a comment I'd like to make about that particular point. Have you been drawing on any work from the Global South to inform your work? No, I haven't. That's a really good question, Kimberly. I'd love to have a chat to you about this if you have any information on that. Who's driving the move to circular? At the moment, it feels like it's business. What is happening at a policy level? It's a great question, Douglas. There are a range of things happening at policy level in Australia and across the world. The EU is definitely a driving force in that space, finding ways to put new regulation and metrics to measure businesses and their performance on circularity. In Australia, the way I feel we're a little bit behind in the way we're approaching it from a policy point of view. You start seeing the circular economy words in a lot of waste policy being developed either at a state level or national level. So again, we're sort of running that risk of minimizing what circular economy means to just a better waste management system. But hey, we have to start somewhere. If that's the way, is that what it takes to bring the circular economy to the table and have a conversation about it, I think we still should celebrate that. Now the challenge for us will be, how do we then take that to the next level and really look at it at end to end on the life cycle, and not just at the end of the process where we're dealing with that current problem. So it's really, helping cities or government think in a more systemic way, and definitely some cities. If you look at what Chris was sharing around the strategies for the City of Sydney, circular economy is definitely something being thought about. So, from my point of view, for circular economy to be enabled, this is going to come from so many angles, and we can't really wait for anyone to drive it particularly. If we wait for policy, this is probably never going to happen, because policy or regulation will be put in place once they start seeing things that happen that need to be regulated. Business can do a lot of things through innovation, and that will also come from the end consumer that might be demanding that change in the first place. So I feel like at all levels of the system, everyone has a role to play, And it's a matter of hopefully all of us do a little bit of that to then create that movement in a much more effective way.